to Zip Code. If you're new to the channel, we welcome you in the family, and if you're coming back, welcome aboard. And today we are not looking at another cup of code. Rather, we will discuss the different levels of being a developer and which side of being a developer you should look into. So, we want to talk about why you shouldn't become a full stack developer and the details that it entails. So, essentially, if you looking at the screen, you can see there's a bunch of frameworks, bunch of front end frameworks, bunch of back end frameworks, databases, and the likes. So we want to touch base on all of these and how you should go about becoming a developer and which one is recommended for you. So essentially, we want to touch on front end first, and we will go to the back end and see the pros and cons of each level of being a developer. So essentially, if you are a front end or if you are a full stack developer, first things first that you would need to consider is the entire stack. You need to know from back end, which means the APIs, like you can see here on our Postman. All of these APIs, you have to know them, develop them. You get the requirements, um, you get to deliver all of those requirements, all of those APIs, integrate with all databases that need to be integrated, to integrate with all other APIs, third-party APIs that might have in the system, basically the entire infrastructure, the network, the performance, the reliability, the availability. So essentially, you cover everything. And also when it comes to the front end part of it, which is essentially what you're looking at here, you would also have to cater for that. Which framework do you want to go with? Angular, React, catering with your Node.js, your going further into your HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So all of those frameworks, you would have to know them. So you essentially become what we call a jack of all trades and a master of none. So if you see this front end, you essentially have to cater for all of this functionality: home, accounts, profile, logout, handling the profile, the user profile, handling different features within the particular app. All of these can be different features in the app, and basically all of this functionality here, you would have to cater for all of this and how user friendly is the system. So if you can see, this is just an example banking app, mini banking app. So essentially we just see the account here, but when it comes to the APIs themselves, you can see in the APIs we can register a new user, and that particular user can have a bank account once they are registered. And we do have an open account API here, which then they can deposit an amount on that account, and then it will have their account available. They can deposit money, they can withdraw, they can transfer, check their balance, and also see account types that are available. So all of these APIs you would have to cater for as a full stack developer. You'd have to master all of these technologies, master all of these frameworks, know the database storage that you're going with, know the cloud service provider that you're going with, and all of those services that you'll be utilizing there if you're storing some large content of or reports or files in that particular cloud. Let's say AWS S3, you are storing your files and reports in there. So you'd have to know all of that, what the entire application entails. And when it comes to enterprise applications, you'd also have to cater for, let's say, O2, where you would have your Google authentication with your application. So if you look here, this is one thing that I'm doing now, another tutorial that I'm working on, to actually showcase how you can allow your Spring Boot backend to authorize using using Google. So we basically use the Google console, which is Google Cloud provided, and you can authorize your users on your system using Google accounts, and it will go through. And also you need to cater for, if it's Active Directory, you need to make sure that an AD authorization is also available in the application. So when you're looking at enterprise-wide applications, you have to cater for all of these as a full stack developer, and that is never a good idea. So if you're one guy focusing on one particular project, it becomes a strain, and also it becomes so much work for you, and that's why you have something called a developer fatigue, where developers will be so exhausted and they wouldn't be able to function. They would need to take leave, take some time off, and that basically takes the project far back, because these guys are now exhausted, they're tired, and they just need to rest and reboot and come back fresh, which basically sets the entire project and the entire team back. And if you look at your tasks on your Jira, those might be delayed because you're looking into so many things. You have so many tasks in the front end, you have so many tasks in your back end as well. So one thing that I would recommend is that you first things first, the easiest part that you can start with as a junior developer would be to look into front end technologies. So in this channel, we predominantly focus on Angular development as our front end. So you can focus on the basics or the fundamentals as HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Start with those basics, understand how they go about achieving delivering a user-friendly interface for your users, where they can interact with their backend and the actual application. And then you can go into now the sophisticated frameworks, your Angular, your React, and then the mobile development, your Android, your iOS development, and all of those other sophisticated front end frameworks that you would prefer. And basically, there is nothing bad with starting with just one side of the spectrum and then growing your way into the other one, where you're in back end and doing much more bigger things, much more complex things, where you're in the mix of business deliverables that doesn't just look at how fancy the application looks, but also how sophisticated it is in delivering high performing and highly available solutions to business and to clients as well. So with with the front end, that's what we have to cover. So if you're a new developer, that's what we would suggest and recommend. Start with the front end, get the gist of it, get to understand the entire application and the deliverable. And it's always recommended as well that if you want to grow your way into the back end, whilst you're focusing on a front end, getting the front end roles in big corporate, that is not so bad. But also on the side, when you free time, you can also play around with some projects where you do your own full stack and grow into it slowly, so that when the opportunity presents itself to grow into a back end development space, you can be in a position to just jump right in without being lost in the mix of things or the bigger scheme of things. You will just jump right in and get to it and hit the ground running, which is one thing that is very handy and very appreciated when it comes to employees or team members that can go the extra mile and do other tasks, or be flexible enough or agile enough to move into other areas within the team. So starting with front end is not so bad, and growing your way into the back end, it's not so bad. So that's what we want to cover with the front end. And then talking looking at the other side of the spectrum, where now we are discussing back end. I would say with backend, as you can see here, we use Spring Boot. So that's one thing that we have. So these are basically the APIs that we have on one of our controllers. We have a create account, we have a deposit, we have a balance there, and then you also pass in the account type that you want to see the balance for, and you can withdraw. To have a withdraw API, we have a transfer API, and all of these APIs you'll have to worry or stress yourself about the business logic. How does it go about um, um, let's say depositing? what are the rules, what do you need, this is the minimum amount you can deposit, this is the minimum amount you can withdraw, or maximum amount you can withdraw, daily limits, um, this is basically the maximum amount you can transfer, and all of those business rules you would have to cater for and worry about and stress yourself about. And because of the complexities that come with being a backend developer, you get to actually do develop the entire logic that caters for all these rules and requirements from clients. You would then get the upper hand when it comes to salaries. That's why you get a lot of backend developers earning so much, and in some cases backend developers earn more than full stack developers, because they are much more dedicated, they are much more into one discipline, they are much more focused, and they can pay their entire focus and attention to the business logic and backend, worrying about service availability or API availability, and they don't have to stress how the app looks or how the web user interface looks. They don't have to stress about that, or where the API is being consumed. That is not their problem. They just need to make sure that the API is available and it delivers the functionality as it is expected. So that is one thing that makes backend developers sort of distinct. And with that particular focus into one discipline, you can then gain the upper hand of being so experienced, and you would then become a much more very valuable asset into the team and into the organization at large, because now you know what you're doing and you know what you're dealing with. And also, if you're comfortable with front end, you can master it. Just focus on that and delivering highly flexible, agile, modernized user interfaces. But also, if you want to focus on the back end, you would make sure that you want to get the gist of the application, what does it need to deliver, and how to make highly available, highly scalable, high performing, and reliable back-end APIs or microservices in that respect. So one thing that we want to jump into now is basically the salaries between front end, between full stack front end and back end. See what are the advantages, or which one pays more, or the averages around those different roles with amongst across companies. So we're just gonna use Indeed. So Indeed, we just go to the generic career salaries, and we want to search here. Let's just say full stack developer. We wanna check that, and let's just say search. Let's see what they have right here. So as you can see, average base salary is 127 873, that is per annum. So you can see that is 127, which is not so bad. This is actually quite amazing. This is like top tier earning roles when it comes to the US, and this is a decent salary, but I think it's around mid range, so it's quite fair. So now let's jump into, let's say, back end, because I want to see the contrast between back end and full stack. Let's see that. Okay, so you see this is like a massive difference. So the average there is 160 thousand, and this is a lot. Actually, the difference is so big. So as a back end developer, you actually earn more than if you're a full stack developer, which is basically doesn't give you any like benefit if you're a full stack developer. It's much more meaningful if you're just focused on one end of the spectrum, and then basically start with the front end and then grow your way into the back end, where then you will be earning more. And obviously, as a junior developer, not a lot of companies will just say, okay, you are back end, let's just take you. But when you are a front end, there are more opportunities for front end developers than there are for back end, because back end are much more dedicated, they're much more focused. So those would need more experience, because you want to make sure that the system is highly available, highly performing, and highly reliable. So hence back end jobs or back end roles are quite fewer than front end roles, so it will be much more recommended for the newer guys to start from the front end. So let's check front end developer. Let's check here. Let's just search, and I think across the world this is how it is. So you can see front-end developer, it's the average is 113, so that's give or take, so that's basically 113 per annum, which is not so bad as well. It's also around the high ranges of income earners, but it's basically the starting ground for in terms of the stack, the tech stack, and the range therein. So you want to make sure that you start from the front end, you grow your way into the back end if you're interested in that, and if you're comfortable with just front end, you can also be there. But also, what this does in terms of your career, it allows you the flexibility to understand what happens in the front end and also understand what happens in the back end. So by the time your career is at its peak, you can then get the higher position of let's say tech lead, system architect, CTO, CIO, and all of those higher exec positions, where you can then be there to assist the entire team and enforcing standards when it comes to the code base, the source control that you're also using, how you want PRs to be handled, handling all of those and releases, uh, basically deployments, testing, live infrastructure maintenance for all the applications that you'll be handling at that level. But then you would understand the entire spectrum across the board, and you'll be comfortable to operate at any level at that time. So it's much more recommended that for a junior developer, start from front end, grow your way slowly into back end, and by the time you get to back end, you would already have the gist of how things are done and how you can basically maneuver around to deliver all of these highly available applications. And that's basically what we wanted to cover in this video, that it is no longer a a sort of a need for you to be full stack at all times. There are much more fewer opportunities because big companies are much more dedicated. They want back end and they want front end, so that the responsibilities are split and the delivery time is always prioritized. So when you're much more focused, they know that you can deliver according to your discipline or your particular role. And also, if you look at job vacancies, you always see these buzzwords that are always advertised, which doesn't make sense. So we definitely do not want any issues when it comes to they have a spec that doesn't actually make sense, but then you half of the stuff you don't even get to do. So focus on what you have and then deliver according to that. And I'm pretty sure that in no time you would be amongst the highest income earners, and you'll be in a comfortable position to go higher and higher. And basically, that's what we recommend. Hope you like and subscribe to this channel, and obviously we'll see you on to the next one. Cheers.